Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really engaging presentation originally delivered at a youth community event. The core focus? Well, it's a modern struggle I think we all know far too well. Trying to find absolute focus in the middle of all the chaotic noise of hustle culture and our everyday anxieties. Because, let's be real, whether you're balancing a career, school, or running a busy household, the sheer volume of demands competing for your attention can be absolutely deafening. The source text we're exploring today presents this incredibly unique, spiritually grounded framework for cutting through all that noise to find just one thing. So, let's jump right in. Okay, let's dive into this with a pretty provocative question. Are you the main character of your life? In today's internet-driven culture, we're constantly conditioned to view the world solely through our own perspective. Think about a movie camera that literally only follows one person around. That's what they call main character syndrome. We wake up and we just kind of view everything and everyone as supporting actors in the grand narrative of us. But as the speaker in our source material points out, treating yourself as the center of the universe, that might actually be the root cause of our modern exhaustion. And to validate those daily anxieties we all feel, the source lists some highly specific, genuinely overwhelming cultural pressures. For instance, we live in a world where 50% of marriages globally are failing. On top of that, there's this intense, crushing pressure, especially amplified by social media, to have made it and be wildly successful by the time you're just 24 years old. If you haven't, society basically implies you failed. The speaker even highlights the total absurdity of societal decay fueled by internet clout, where people will literally do $1,000 tile backflips just for views. It's just a relentless, exhausting hustle that distracts us from what actually matters. Now, to anchor all these statistics in real human emotion, the presentation shares a deeply poignant testimony from a graduating youth. This young student battled a severe illness during their secondary schooling, to the point of being absolutely terrified to simply go to sleep. But look at the first part of their quote here. It was so painful knowing that it's just you that's not moving along. That fear of falling behind your peers, of missing out on the milestones everyone else seems to be hitting, that is a universal modern anxiety. It's the pressure of your main character timeline breaking down. So, to find an antidote to these modern TikTok anxieties and crushing societal pressures, the speaker does something brilliant. They seamlessly transition the narrative to a 2,000-year-old biblical story. It's a fascinating pivot, mostly because it proves that contemporary exhaustion is definitely not a new human problem. We're going to look at a case study that perfectly mirrors our own struggle to balance endless responsibilities today. The text perfectly illustrates this ancient conflict through what we'll call the Mary and Martha paradox. The source describes Martha as, frankly, frantic. She's hosting at least a dozen people, including the most important figure of her time, Jesus. She's distracted, worried, and troubled by all the logistics of serving. And, to be fair, the speaker notes that her tasks, providing food and shelter, are legitimately important. But then, contrast that with Mary. Mary simply sat at Jesus' feet and focused entirely on his words. She chose the good part, the one essential thing, while Martha was completely drowning in the mechanics of hosting. Which brings us to this highly compelling question. Was Martha's distraction actually a subtle form of pride? The speaker unpacks a really fascinating theological insight here. We usually think of pride as inflating yourself, acting larger than life. But the source argues that pride is really just an over-focus on self-importance. Martha was essentially saying, look at all this vital work I am doing for you. Tell my sister to get up and help me. She made her acts of service the center of the narrative, and in doing so, temporarily lost sight of the guest she was supposedly serving. So, the absolutely crucial point is how we actually fix this. The primary theological solution presented borrows a very modern concept straight from Gen Z internet culture, decentering. You might have heard phrases online like decentering the government or decentering toxic relationships. Well, here, the speaker applies it to decentering ourselves. It means intentionally stepping off the pedestal. Actually, it's making the active choice to realize you are not the sun that the universe orbits around, which honestly removes the crushing weight of having to control everything in your life. And this brings us to a massive light bulb moment from the presentation, anchored by a powerful quote from Dr. Miles Monroe. When the use of a thing is not known, abuse is inevitable. The speaker emphasizes that abuse in this context simply means abnormal use. If we don't decenter ourselves and figure out the true purpose, the one thing that our lives are actually meant for, we will inevitably abuse our time, our relationships, and our power. We'll end up hustling for all the wrong reasons and burning ourselves out on things that ultimately just don't fulfill us. To really drive home what the absolute peak of modern worldly success looks like, The speaker playfully maps out Elon Musk's massive earthly pursuits. You've got SpaceX and Starlink trying to conquer aerospace, xAI pushing the very boundaries of artificial intelligence, and Neuralink attempting to physically merge human cognition with computers. By all earthly metrics, this is it. This is the absolute zenith of human achievement and ambition. It's the ultimate manifestation of using your time and resources to conquer the physical world.
But immediately following that, the speaker poses a crucial question. What happens when you have it all but lack the one thing? It really emphasizes the ultimate limits of earthly wealth and technological achievement. You know, you can conquer space, build incredible AI, and become a literal trillionaire, but the source argues that without the spiritual anchor of prioritizing God above all else, there is still a foundational void. Earthly success, no matter how grand, just does not equal spiritual fulfillment or true purpose.
And this leads to a profound reframing of a concept many of us think we already understand. The speaker redefines the concept of sin not merely as malicious evil, but literally as missing the mark. Think of it like an arrow hitting outside the bullseye. The speaker argues that you can be pursuing genuinely good and important things like a stable career, community building, or financial security, but if those things take priority over the main thing, you're missing the mark. You are, by this definition, in a state of sin simply through misaligned priorities. The speaker builds on this idea using another classic biblical narrative, Cain and Abel. Now, Cain was a farmer who brought the fruit of the ground, which likely took immense time, sweat, and effort to cultivate. Yet his offering wasn't respected and he became furious. Abel, on the other hand, brought the firstborn of his flock and was accepted. The speaker analyzes this Genesis story to demonstrate a really vital point. Acceptance isn't about an underlying, convoluted moral complexity or working yourself to the bone. It's simply about giving exactly what is requested. Cain missed the mark of what was asked. Abel hit the bullseye.
And that perfectly transitions into this foundational Christian concept presented in the source, right standing, or righteousness. The speaker strips away the heavy, complicated religious jargon and defines it beautifully. Right standing is achieved by acting like a child. When you're called, you simply respond with obedience. You just say, "Yes, sir." It's not about agonizing over complex doctrines or carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. It's the simplicity of decentering yourself enough to just follow instructions. So what does this actually look like when put into practice? The source shares a deeply inspiring historical anecdote. In the early 1900s, a man named William Seymour, the son of black slaves, became intrigued by teachings on the Holy Spirit. He faced immense societal resistance, institutional prejudice, and open mockery from spiritual superiors. Yet against all odds, he didn't try to fight every battle or control the narrative. He focused purely on his one thing, seeking God's presence. And because of that singular focus, he sparked the Azusa Street Revival, which became a massive global movement. It's an incredible testament to the power of pure, decentered focus.
Of course, the speaker makes sure to ground this theology right back in the reality of modern life. They transparently share their own daily struggles, talking about the constant buzzing noise of endless church programs and questioning out loud how anyone manages to balance a marriage, children, and a demanding career. The speaker even mentions dealing with heavy workplace conflict, noting that 6 people resigned in their office in just 1 month. The threat of burnout is very real, even for those preaching about focus. The chaos doesn't just magically disappear.
But that brings us to the ultimate conclusion of our explainer today. Rest only happens in His presence. The speaker argues that, look, you still have to go out into the world, handle conflict, and meet your daily responsibilities. The difference lies entirely in where you operate from. Are you showing up to your life from a place of frantic exhaustion, acting as the overwhelmed main character? Or are you showing up from a place of true rest, anchored in the one thing? It's a really provocative question that challenges how we structure our entire lives. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer as we unpack these fascinating insights, and I genuinely hope it leaves you rethinking your own main character narrative. Catch you next time.